Have you ever done something bad simply because you knew there wouldn't be any consequences? You might have lied about things merely because there was no way people would have figured out the truth. Or maybe you read private messages on someone else's phone when the person wasn't around. Perhaps you called in sick to work or skipped school, even when you were perfectly healthy. So you might have thought, why not do it? This basic experience everyone is familiar with ties into a serious philosophical problem. If your motivation for acting righteously arises out of fear of punishment, it seems to follow that morality is purely instrumental, namely that we are being moral because it is convenient for us, and not due to the internal value of being moral. However, there is a tension here. Many people believe that morality is indubitable, absolute, or even divine, and that it is not contingent on social order. If everyone in the society acts in an immoral way, it doesn't mean that you should as well. There seems to be a sense of internal responsibility in what it means to be moral, something larger than merely fear of social disapproval or self-interest. That's what Socrates demonstrates through his personal example before being executed. He refuses to abandon his values and his understanding of what is right and what is wrong. Jesus Christ seems to convey a similar message. There is something greater in the idea of being good than merely social benefits. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. At the same time, there are opponents of this view. They claim that justice and morality is nothing more than a social contract. Left entirely free, people would pursue their own self-interest, even at the expense of others. But since no one wants to live in constant fear of being harmed or exploited, they collectively agree to abide by rules, not because they value justice intrinsically, but because it is the lesser evil compared to anarchy. In this framework, morality is a kind of calculated restraint. We give up some freedom, like the freedom to steal or deceive, in return for a society where others also restrain themselves. Justice, then, is not a higher calling or inner virtue. It is simply the price we pay for peace. This line of thought echoes Glaucon's argument in the Republic, where he claims that people act justly only because they fear the consequences of being unjust, and because they seek the rewards that come with a good reputation. In this video, we'll discuss a fragment from Plato's Republic where Glaucon delivers the strongest argument for why we should see justice as something instrumental, rather than as valuable in itself. We'll cover his example of the Ring of Invisibility, the very one that inspired Tolkien in his fiction. We'll also take a quick look at Plato's response to the evidence that Glaucon presents. By the end of the video, you'll have a deeper understanding of what it means to be moral. You may reinforce your current understanding of morality, or you may change it entirely, being convinced by one of the sides. In the second chapter of the Republic, Glaucon divides goods into three types. The first is things valuable because of themselves. His examples are joy and all the harmless pleasures that have no results beyond the joy of having them. You can also think of love, happiness, contemplation, aesthetic appreciation, all the things that we desire not because of what they lead to, but for their own sake. We don't seek pleasure as a means to something else. We seek it because we consider it valuable in itself. The second type of goods includes things that are valuable because of their consequences. For example, physical training, medicine, or money. We desire these things because they bring something that we consider inherently valuable. We don't want chocolate for its own sake. We want it because it brings us pleasure. So chocolate is valuable as a means for obtaining something that we value in itself. It plays a role of an instrument for getting what we truly want. The third and the highest type of goods includes things that are valuable both in themselves and because of their consequences. Glaucon's examples are knowing, seeing, and being healthy. Another good example is friendship. Having friends definitely brings a lot of benefits, such as support, emotional stability, and a sense of joy and happiness. But we seem to value friendship as something special, something not reducible to any of these things. So friendship is both useful and inherently valuable. So where does justice fit in? Well, as we pointed out in the introduction, there is a disagreement here. Plato believes that justice belongs to the highest type of goods. It is valuable both for its own sake and for the results that it brings. Glaucon also tends to think so, but he wants to figure out the truth. So he attempts to defend an alternative view that he refers to as the general opinion. Its proponents say, justice belongs to the onerous kind and is to be practiced for the sake of the rewards and popularity that come from a reputation for justice, but is to be avoided because of itself as something burdensome. Here we can clearly see that this opinion places justice in the second type of goods, the ones valuable only for their consequences. We also see that justice is described as onerous, meaning that it brings a certain discomfort. The fact that the rewards come from a reputation for justice is also important to keep in mind, because Glaucon will expand on this idea later in his speech. Let's first figure out why justice is onerous. It is mainly because it makes us go against our natural desires. People often want to act unjustly when it benefits them. Lying, cheating, taking more than their share. Justice, by contrast, requires self-restraint, sacrifice, and denying oneself certain pleasures or advantages. So it's experienced as a constraint on what we naturally want to do. But where does justice come from? Why do we even need to consider being just if it goes against our instincts? Glaucon explains that those who defend this view say that doing injustice is naturally good, while suffering it is bad, but because the harm of suffering injustice outweighs the benefit of committing it, people agree to avoid both. They make laws and call what the law commands just. Justice, then, is a compromise, a middle point between the best, doing injustice freely, and the worst, being wronged with no revenge. People value it not as a good, but because they are too weak to do injustice with impunity. A truly powerful person wouldn't bother with such an agreement. He would do whatever he wants, because people naturally have the desire to outdo others and get more and more. That's quite a cruel view on justice, and is popular nowadays as well as in the times of Plato. To illustrate this point, Glaucon tells a story of the magical ring found by Gyges. Tolkien later borrowed this idea for his fantasy novels. Gyges was a shepherd serving the king of Lydia. One day, after a violent earthquake, the ground split open near where he was watching his flock. Curious, he went down into the opening and discovered a strange scene: a giant bronze horse, hollow and with doors. Inside, he found a massive corpse wearing only a gold ring. He took the ring and left. Later, during a meeting with other shepherds, Gyges discovered that turning the ring's collet inward made him invisible. Realizing the power he now had, he managed to get sent to the royal court. There he seduced the queen and with her help conspired against the king, and slew him and took the kingdom. The ring here serves as a metaphor for power gained unjustly. Similarly to how Gyges used his invisibility to gain control over the kingdom, ordinary people often gain benefits by lies and manipulations, remaining, in a sense, invisible to others. Glaucon then suggests a following thought experiment. Let's say there were two magical rings, one worn by a just person, the other by an unjust one, and both gave their wearer the power to act without consequences. It's hard to imagine that anyone, no matter how virtuous, would resist the temptation to abandon justice or avoid taking something that isn't theirs. No one could stay honest or respect others' property if they could do whatever they wanted without being punished. Some might say that it shows that people are never just by choice, but only because they're forced to be. That is already a very strong point, but Glaucon doesn't stop here. He then pushes it even further and suggests to imagine two different people, one fully just and one fully unjust. Imagine that the first person manages to slip away with his injustice and never get caught, and in fact is believed to be just in the society and is praised for his good deeds, while the second person does only good actions but is accused of being unjust and is punished and persecuted in the society, much like Plato's teacher Socrates or Jesus. Glaucon's question is, who will be happy and who will be unhappy? This is probably the most fierce illustration to show that justice is not valuable in itself. After all, how can we stand our ground if no one believes in us and accuses us of wrongdoing? They'll say that a just person in such circumstances will be whipped, stretched on a rack, chained, blinded with fire, and at the end, when he has suffered every kind of evil, he'll be impaled and will realize that one shouldn't want to be just. but to be believed to be just. That's where it gets clear that what we truly want is not to be just, but to have a reputation for justice, because this reputation gives us all the benefits. A truly unjust person knows how the world really works and doesn't really care about what others think. He doesn't want the image of being unjust. He wants to be unjust for real while appearing to be the opposite. He is smart and strategic. Because people believe he is just, he gains power, marries into any family he wants, arranges good marriages for his kids, makes deals with anyone and gets all the benefits without feeling bad about doing wrong. At this point, it seems to be impossible to rehabilitate the concept of justice in the face of cynicism. Glaucon has convincingly shown that justice is valued not for its own sake, but as a useful instrument. And more importantly, that it is the appearance of justice, rather than justice itself, that holds real value. As long as we avoid being caught with our injustices, as long as no one sees the harm we commit, we are regarded as successful. Justice seems to be entirely discredited. Why be good when no one is watching and when being bad brings rewards? Glaucon has forced us into the corner, and it is in this corner that Socrates starts to push back. Socrates' response to this challenge is quite complex, so it won't be covered in detail in this video. Instead, I'd like to focus on his strategy, as it offers a general understanding of what he aims to do when defending the concept of justice. He begins his defense by proposing that we should first search for what justice means and how it manifests. This seems reasonable, since if we are to argue about something, we must first understand what it is, rather than simply discuss whether it benefits or harms us. To achieve this, he examines how justice appears in society. His idea is that since justice exists both in the state and in the individual, it is better to examine it in the state first. The reason is that the state is larger, and therefore, as he puts it, there is more justice in the larger thing, and it will be easier to learn what it is. Some philosophers have criticized this method, arguing that Socrates blurs the line between two different types of justice: political justice in the state and psychological justice in the soul. They claim that it is incoherent to assume that what makes a society just is the same as what makes an individual just. However, others argue that his reasoning is not based on mere analogy, but rather on a structural similarity and deep interconnectedness between the state and the individual. For Socrates, the city and the soul reflect each other not superficially, but in the way their internal parts are organized and how they function together to produce harmony and justice. This interconnectedness is precisely why Socrates pays so much attention to education and cultural formation in the Republic. He believes that the development of justice in the soul is inseparable from cultural and social environment in which a person is raised. Children, especially at a very young age, mimic everything they're exposed to, and they absorb models of behavior from their surroundings. Once these patterns take root in early life, they become nearly impossible to change later. Therefore, if we want individuals to have a just organization of the psyche, they must be exposed to just influences from the beginning, and such influences can only be reliably provided by a just state. For this reason, the state's primary role is to create conditions that foster the growth of justice within individuals. He says, for example, that all citizens must learn music to internalize harmony and develop a sense of temperance, especially in relation to food and sensual pleasures. This helps keep their appetites in check. Those naturally inclined toward courage and physical strength, future warriors, must be surrounded by stories of bravery and nobility, so that these qualities are solidified in their characters. Philosophers, on the other hand, must be immersed in wisdom and knowledge to learn how to govern justly and to pursue truth. Through this comprehensive cultural shaping, the state transmits justice into the souls of its inhabitants. Yet the relationship works both ways. Just individuals also help sustain and reinforce the justice of the state. When someone is raised in a just environment and develops a harmonious psyche, they are naturally inclined to act justly. These just actions in turn influence others, especially children, who observe and internalize these patterns. For instance, a just warrior who consistently demonstrates bravery and moderation provides a living example for his children, who absorb this model of behavior and become brave themselves, further reinforcing the state's justice. In this way, justice flows in both directions, from the state into the soul and from the soul back into the state. Thus, Socrates shows us that justice is not merely a social structure or an abstract ideal, but a lived process of externalization and internalization. It is shaped by our surroundings and, once rooted in the soul, becomes the force that shapes society in return. His investigation is grounded in careful observations of how cultural influences impact psychological development, and how the state and individual, like mirror images, co-create one another in the pursuit of justice. But this vision also serves a deeper purpose. It provides a philosophical foundation for why justice is not merely instrumental. If the just soul is one in which reason rules over spirit and appetite, and where each part performs its proper function in harmony, then being just means being psychologically healthy, eternally ordered and at peace. An unjust person, by contrast, suffers from internal turmoil, with lower desires overpowering reason and leading to a kind of self-inflicted tyranny. Socrates ultimately argues that justice is valuable in itself because it constitutes the well-being of the soul. Just as physical health is desirable not because of its external praise, but because it makes us function better and feel whole, so too is justice something we should pursue regardless of rewards or recognition. In this way, Socrates answers Glaucon not by appealing to fear or reputation, but by showing that the truly just life is the most fulfilling one, even if it comes with suffering or misunderstanding. Justice is not a mask we wear to gain favor. It's a condition of the soul we cultivate for its own sake, because to live justly is to live well. So what does it truly mean to be moral? Is it simply avoiding punishment and gaining approval, or is there something deeper, a kind of harmony within the soul that makes justice desirable in itself? For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? Glaucon challenges us to confront our darkest temptations and to ask whether we would still act morally even if no one could see us. But Socrates invites us to look inward, to see justice not as a burden, but as the very structure of a happy and fulfilled life. This is not an easy position to hold in a world that often rewards appearances over substance, but perhaps that's what makes it so powerful. When we choose to act justly even when no one is watching, when we cultivate inner order rather than chase external praise, we're choosing to live a life of meaning, not convenience. So I leave you with this question. If you had the ring of Gyges, if no one could see what you did, would you still choose to be just? Let me know in the comments below what your answer is and why. Would you side with Glaucon's realism or Socrates' idealism? And if this made you think more deeply about your own moral compass, consider subscribing for more philosophical content like this.